The first scream came from the hills. It wasn't human, not anymore. It was the sound of a man's soul tearing free of his throat. By the time Clara Briggs stepped onto her porch, the echo had already been eaten by the wind. The horizon bled orange as dusk swallowed the New Mexico plains, and the world smelled of dust and gunpowder. She'd heard that sound before. It was the noise men made when justice rode too fast to think, too blind to see. In the distance, riders were coming. 6 of them, silhouettes burned black against the dying sun. Clara's hands tightened on the rifle. She told herself they'd pass by, that whatever hell they were chasing would keep moving. But when one of the horses stumbled and the posse circled, she saw the truth. They'd found what they were hunting, and God help her. It wasn't dead yet. The figure tumbled down the ridge, rolling through mesquite and stone until it came to rest in a patch of blood-dark soil. He was young, maybe 20, his chest slick with crimson, hair braided with feathers half torn loose. The sight of him froze Clara in place, a Comanche, her pulse hammered in her throat. Every story she'd ever been told about them flooded her head. Stories of raids, fires, screams. Her husband, before the war took him, used to say, "If you see one breathing, make sure he don't stay that way." But the man at her feet wasn't some savage ghost from the hills. He was just a boy bleeding into the dirt, gasping like he was trying to breathe back his soul. The posse's shouts were closer now. English words spat with hate. "He's headed for the creek. Cut him off!" Clara crouched beside the wounded man. His eyes fluttered open, dark, wild, full of pain. He didn't speak, but his gaze said everything. "Help me or I die." She should have walked away. Let the desert decide. Instead, something ancient and dangerous in her chest shifted. The same part that had buried her husband alone, that had learned to shoot coyotes off her porch, that had stopped praying years ago. "Damn you," she whispered, then slid her arms beneath him. He was heavier than she expected. His blood soaked through her dress, warm and slick. She half-dragged, half-carried him toward the barn, boots sinking in the dirt. The riders crested the hill just as she pushed the door shut. Through the cracks, she saw them. Rough men with rifles, faces burned by sun and violence. Their leader spat into the dust. "He went this way," he growled. "Bastard's wounded. He won't make it far." Clara pressed her back to the wall, breath trembling. The man on the floor moaned softly and she clamped her hand over his mouth. The posse split off, one riding toward the creek, the others toward town. After a long moment, silence took hold. Clara waited until the hoofbeats faded, then turned back to the bleeding stranger. His breath came shallow. The bullet had torn through his side, clean but deep. She'd stitched worse, on pigs, once on herself when a barbed wire caught her, but never on a human. "Don't you die in my barn," she muttered, fetching the whiskey. When she poured it over the wound, he flinched and muttered words she couldn't understand. His hands clutched at the dirt, muscles rigid with pain. She worked quickly, jaw set, ignoring the smell of iron and rot. After what felt like hours, the bleeding slowed. She tore a strip from her skirt and tied it tight. When she finally met his eyes again, something passed between them. Not trust, but the ghost of it. "You're safe for now," she said. He blinked once, heavy-lidded, then whispered something in Comanche, a low rasp that sounded like a prayer or a curse. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every groan of wind felt like a warning. She'd spent years alone since her husband died in the border war, her only company the ghosts of what she'd lost. Now there was another kind of ghost under her roof, one made of flesh and blood and danger. She sat by the fire, the rifle across her knees, listening to him breathe through the cracks in the barn wall. At dawn, the wind changed. She smelled smoke, wood smoke, not from her chimney. When she stepped outside, the horizon shimmered with movement. Shadows moved in the sagebrush, silent and low. They were watching. Comanche warriors, a dozen at least, maybe more, their silhouettes barely visible in the pale light. They circled her property like wolves, patient and certain. Clara's heart turned to ice. She understood then what she had done. She hadn't saved a man. She had taken a piece of him from his people, and they had come to take him back. Out on the horizon, the shapes in the brush hadn't moved. They just watched, waiting. She stood on her porch, rifle held tight, her nightdress heavy with sweat despite the cold. The barn door creaked once in the wind. Inside, the wounded man slept, or pretended to. Clara whispered to herself, "If you're still here come morning, you'd better have a reason." The sun crawled up, pale and cold. When its edge cleared the hills, the riders became clear, painted faces, feathers stirring in the wind, horses shifting nervously. They made no sound, no call. It was worse than noise. It was patience. She went back into the barn. The man's eyes were open. He was awake, watching her like a wolf watches a trap. "They're out there," she said. He didn't answer. "You brought them." His voice was quiet, ragged. "You saved me. And that's my sin, isn't it?" He tried to sit up and failed. Clara poured a cup of water and held it to his lips. He drank slow, never taking his eyes from hers. "My name," he said at last, "is Tohano." She hesitated. "Clara." He nodded once, a small bow, and winced when the movement tugged his wound. "If my brothers come, they will think you are the enemy. Then talk to them. Tell them I'm not." He shook his head. "They will not listen until they see me standing." The light through the cracks grew sharper. A shadow crossed the doorway, then another. Clara's stomach twisted. "Then you'd better find your legs fast," she said. Tohano looked toward the door, listening. "You have no reason to die for me." "Don't plan on it," she said, checking the rifle. The first arrow hit the barn wall with a dull thunk. A warning shot. The horse in the corral screamed. Clara's heart kicked against her ribs. "They mean to frighten," Tohano said. "Not yet kill." "Well, they're doing a fine job." He reached for her arm. His hand was rough, hot with fever. "If they see you carry that gun, they will not stop." "I don't put it down for anyone," she said. His voice dropped. "Then we die together." Another arrow struck, closer this time, and splinters rained from the doorframe. Clara backed toward the stall where she'd hidden her husband's old Winchester. Her fingers trembled as she loaded it. "Stay low," she said. "Tohano." His voice was weaker now. "If they kill you, the wind will remember. It will not forgive me. Then make sure they don't." Outside, a voice called, deep, commanding, in a language she couldn't understand. The warriors answered in one breath, like thunder rolling down a canyon. Tohano closed his eyes. "It is my uncle," he whispered. "He leads them. He believes I am dead. He will not stop until he sees proof." Clara glanced at the door. "Then he's about to get it." She stepped out onto the porch. The sky had turned white with dust and snow. The riders sat still, eyes like dark coals in painted faces. She lifted her rifle but didn't aim, not yet. "I took him in because he was dying," she shouted. "If that's a crime, you can hang me for it. But I won't hand him over to die like an animal." The one in front dismounted. He carried no weapon, only a staff wrapped in red cloth. His eyes were unreadable, ancient. He said something low, and the rest fell silent. Behind her, Tohano's voice came from the doorway, strained but steady. "Uncle," he called, answering in the same tongue. Every head turned. The old man froze where he stood. Tohano leaned against the post, blood dark on his shirt. "She saved me," he said. "If you take her life, you shame me." The old man spoke again, quiet, measured. Clara couldn't tell if it was blessing or sentence. Then he turned his horse and signaled the others. One by one they wheeled and vanished into the haze. Silence dropped like snow. Clara didn't move until the last hoofbeat was gone. Then her knees buckled. The rifle clattered to the boards. Tohano caught her before she hit the ground. "They will not return," he said. "Not tonight." Her breath shook. "You said they wanted proof." "They saw it," he murmured. "You stood when I could not." For the first time since her husband's death, Clara felt the warmth of another heartbeat against hers, faint, unsteady, alive. Outside, the wind rose again, whispering through the grass like the low voice of the desert itself. It carried the smell of smoke and something else, a promise or a warning. Clara sat by the dying fire, her palms still stained with dried blood. Every flicker of light made shadows dance across the room, shapes that looked like men on horseback, like ghosts come back to judge her. Tahano slept on her husband's old cot near the hearth, wrapped in blankets she hadn't touched since the funeral. His breathing was slow now, steady, but every exhale seemed to pull something from her. Fear, anger, maybe guilt. She told herself she'd done what was right. She told herself that saving a man shouldn't feel like betrayal. But the truth came creeping in anyway, whispering like frost around the windows. You chose a stranger over your own kind. Outside, the wind began to shift again. It had a voice that night, low, almost human. Sometimes it sounded like her husband calling from the barn, sometimes like the posse's leader yelling, "Hang her with him!" Clara pressed her hands to her ears. "Stop," she breathed. "Just stop." But the sound didn't stop. It changed. From the corner of the room came a faint scraping, like wood dragging across stone. Her eyes darted there to the door. It was closed, bolted. Yet the sound came again, louder this time. She rose, heart hammering, and crossed the room with her rifle. "Tahano," she whispered. "Wake up," he stirred, eyes half open. "What is it?" "Something's outside." He sat up, listening. The noise came again, now a thud, then another. "It's not them," he said softly. "My people do not come at night. Then what the hell is it?" Neither of them spoke after that. The thudding stopped. For a while there was only the creak of wind through the eaves. Then, 3 sharp knocks. Clara froze. They were on the inside wall. She turned, slow, every muscle in her body drawn tight as wire. Nothing there. The house was empty, but the air had changed, colder, heavy with a smell like wet earth. Tahano whispered something in his language, a short prayer, rhythmic, almost sung. When he finished, his face was pale. "You have stirred the ones that walk," he said. She frowned. "What do you mean, stirred?" "The place where you found me. There are graves there, old ones. You stepped between them when you carried me." Her throat went dry. "You're saying this is—" He nodded once. "They remember the blood. They follow it." A chill rippled through her skin. "I don't believe in ghosts." "You don't have to," he said quietly. "They believe in you." The fire cracked, and for a second Clara saw movement in the reflection. A face, white and silent, behind her own. She spun, rifle raised, but nothing was there. Just the walls, the dust, the cold. The house groaned. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes howled, long mournful notes that twisted in the air like broken music. Tahano's gaze flicked toward the window. "They are warning," he said. Clara lowered the rifle just enough to breathe. About what? That the living are not alone here anymore. The fire guttered, then went out. Darkness swallowed them whole. By morning there was no trace of what she'd seen, or thought she'd seen. But something in the air had changed. The snow had fallen heavy through the night, covering every track, every sign of the riders who'd surrounded her home. Yet in the whiteness near the barn, one set of footprints remained, bare, deep, leading nowhere. She followed them with her eyes until they disappeared beneath the old oak. The tree was split, blackened, struck by lightning years ago. She'd always avoided it. Today, the wind through its branches sounded like whispering voices. Behind her, Tahano stood at the door, wrapped in a blanket. "You should burn that tree," he said. "Why?" "Because something inside it watches you." Clara turned back toward the house, her pulse beating in her throat. "You talk like a man who's seen too much," she said. He looked at her for a long moment. "And you talk like someone who hasn't seen enough." When their eyes met, something shifted again. Not fear, not anger, but a quiet recognition. Two ghosts from different worlds, standing in the same cold light. That evening, as the snow melted into mud, Tahano helped her repair the barn. His movements were slow but steady. She watched his hands, scarred, strong, careful. When their fingers brushed over the hammer, the touch lingered. Neither spoke. They didn't have to. The silence between them said more than words could. But when she turned away, she saw it again. A shadow moving against the light that wasn't his. And this time, it smiled. Something older, hungrier. Tahano sat across the fire, half in shadow. His face looked carved from stone, but his eyes, those dark, still eyes, followed her every move. Between them, the fire burned low, the air trembling with the faint hum of something neither dared to name. "Your land," he said quietly, "was once a place of burial, long before your people came." Clara's hands tightened on the cup. "You mean the settlers?" "I mean anyone. The ground here remembers. Every death leaves a name behind." She tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. Too sharp, too hollow. "Then maybe it remembers mine too." Tohano's gaze didn't break. Not yet. The wind howled against the shutters. It sounded like voices again, whispering words that brushed her ears but left no meaning, like a language she almost understood once and forgot. She rose and paced toward the window. Outside, the moonlight pooled silver over the snow, and the tree near the barn swayed though there was no wind. Its branches reached like fingers. Behind her, Tohano spoke again, his voice softer. "Do you ever dream, Clara Briggs?" She turned slowly. "Every night. About the man I buried. Your husband," she nodded. "He died screaming a name that wasn't mine." Tohano's eyes dropped to the fire. The dead don't always rest easy. Seems like no one does. A silence stretched between them, long, heavy, alive. The fire cracked, and sparks rose between them like embers of something dangerous. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "What do your people believe happens when the living wake the dead?" "They come to finish what was left undone," he said. "Sometimes love, sometimes revenge." Her breath caught. "And how do you tell the difference?" He looked up, the flame's reflection dancing in his eyes. "You don't." That night she dreamed again. In the dream, she stood barefoot in the snow, her hands red to the wrist. The oak tree loomed before her, hollowed at its heart. Something inside it breathed, slow, deep, patient. She reached in, and a hand, thin and cold as stone, reached back. When she woke, she wasn't in bed. She was standing by the window, the floor freezing beneath her feet. Outside, the oak's hollow glowed faintly, as if lit from within. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt drawn to it. She wrapped herself in a shawl and stepped outside. The air was razor sharp, her breath white against the night. Snow whispered underfoot. Behind her, the cabin door opened softly. Tohano's voice cut through the dark. "Clara, don't." She stopped but didn't turn. "There's something out there." "Yes," he said, stepping closer. "And it's waiting for you to listen." She turned her head, eyes wide. "Then what do I do?" His breath fogged beside hers. "You stop listening," but it was too late. The glow pulsed once, and a whisper rippled through the air. Her name, spoken in her husband's voice. She dropped the shawl. Tohano lunged forward, catching her wrist before she could move another step. Their faces were inches apart. Her pulse raced beneath his fingers. "That is not your dead," he whispered. "It wears his voice to bring you closer." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why me?" "Because you hear what others refuse to. Because you opened your door when the world told you not to. Mercy has a price." For a long moment, neither moved. Snow fell softly around them, the world holding its breath. His hand was still on hers, warm against the cold. Then slowly, she looked up at him, the man she'd saved, the man whose people had nearly killed her, the man who spoke to the dark as if it listened. "What if it's not mercy I wanted?" she said. What if it was something else? Tohano didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because in that silence, in that trembling stillness between the living and the haunted, something passed between them. Not words, not even thought. Just a pulse, shared, fragile, human. And the darkness beneath the tree stirred again, whispering something that sounded almost like a laugh, like the sky had forgotten how to be blue. Clara moved through the cabin as if she were part of a dream she could not wake from. Every board creaked too loud. Every shadow lingered too long. Tohano sat near the fire, sharpening his knife. His movements were steady, calm, but his eyes flicked to the window every few seconds, like he was waiting for something. "They'll come for you," he said. She paused. "The Comanche?" He shook his head slowly. "The ones who think you betrayed them." "The ones who think you saved a devil," she forced a hollow laugh. "Then I guess we're both devils now." He didn't smile. "You don't understand. When you pulled me from the snow, you pulled more than a man. I was already dying. They marked me for death. I should have stayed buried in the white." Clara leaned against the table, her fingers trembling around a tin cup. You talk like the world's already ended. It did, he said softly. You just haven't seen it yet. Outside, the horses screamed. Not the normal kind of fear. It was deeper, primal. Tohano stood in one smooth motion, knife flashing in his hand. Clara rushed to the door. The snow was churned red and brown. Tracks everywhere, not boots, not hooves. Bare feet, hundreds of them circling the house. She stepped back, breath shaking. What is that? Tohano's jaw clenched. The dead that remember. The ones we buried without names. The whisper started again, crawling through the walls, threading through her hair. It said her name in 100 different voices, all wrong, all familiar. Clara pressed her hands over her ears. Make it stop. Tohano caught her shoulders. You have to face it. The land doesn't forget mercy or sin. Then the door shook, once, twice, then again, harder, like fists pounding from the other side of the grave. The window cracked. The fire flared blue. Tohano shouted words she couldn't understand, old words that seemed to pull the sound out of the air itself. The whisper twisted into a wail and vanished. Silence crashed down like thunder. Clara dropped to her knees. What was that? Something between us and them, he said, breathing hard. They don't forgive, but they listen. She stared at him, blood on his cheek, knife still in hand, breath fogging in the frozen air. You knew this would happen. Yes, and you stayed. He nodded once. Because you did. The fire dimmed again, softer now, warmer. For the first time, she realized how close they stood, her chest nearly brushing his. The knife lowered, and his hand found her face, hesitant but sure. You should hate me, he said. Maybe I do, she whispered. But not enough. He leaned closer, his breath mixing with hers. Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss, not yet, but something deeper, rawer. The world outside fell away, leaving only the rhythm of two hearts that didn't know which side of the grave they belonged on. The sound of hooves shattered it. Clara jerked back. Outside, through the cracks in the window, torchlight flickered, riders shouting. English this time. The Posse! The same men she'd fooled, lied to, when she dragged Tohano from the snow. They found us, she said. They won't take me alive. They'll kill you. They'll kill you first for harboring me. Clara's mind raced. We could run. Run where? The land's cursed. It follows us now. The shouting grew louder. Boots hit the porch. A rifle cocked. Clara turned to him, voice breaking. If we die, tell me it mattered. He met her eyes. It did. The door exploded inward, splinters flying. Gunfire tore through the smoke. Clara screamed, dove behind the table. Tohano moved like a ghost, striking once, twice. Men fell. Blood painting the snow just outside the threshold. Then, silence, smoke, steam, the smell of powder and iron. Clara crawled from behind the table, coughing, her dress torn. Tohano? He stood by the door, chest heaving, blood dripping down his arm. 3 men dead at his feet, the rest gone. You killed them. They came to finish what fear started. She stumbled toward him. They'll come back. He looked at her, eyes dark, distant. Then they'll find ghosts. He dropped the knife. It clattered to the floor, the sound echoing like a bell tolling from somewhere far away. Clara caught his arm, guided him toward the bed. You're hurt. He didn't resist. He just watched her, quiet, as she tore cloth for bandages. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from something that felt dangerously close to wanting. Why do you look at me like that? She whispered. Because you saw what I am, he said, voice barely audible. And you didn't turn away. She pressed the bandage to his wound. Maybe I should have. Then the darkness would have taken you instead. Her hands stilled. The room was silent again, except for the faint moan of wind outside and the slow, rhythmic beat of 2 hearts trying not to break. He reached for her wrist, fingers curling just enough to stop her shaking. If they come again, he said, I'll stand between you and death. You already did. And then, for the first time, she leaned into him, not as savior or stranger, but as something else entirely. The snow outside kept falling. The world didn't forgive, but for one moment it forgot. Dozens of shadows. The Comanche. Torches flickered. Paint glistened like blood under the moon. And in the center stood Tohano, stripped of his coat, bare to the waist, arms bound in rope. Her voice caught in her throat. "No." The old chief stepped forward, face painted in black ash. He spoke words Clara didn't understand, but the meaning needed no translation. Betrayal, curse, judgment. Tohano met her eyes across the distance. No fear, only sorrow. Only peace. Clara stumbled forward. "Stop! He saved me!" "He—" Hands grabbed her from behind. Rough, cold, not human. She spun. No one. Only shadows writhing like smoke. The dead were here again, drawn by the living's hate. The chief raised his hand. A knife glinted. "Tohano!" she screamed. The knife came down, but not on him. He moved first, faster than breath. He broke free, the blade cutting through rope and skin. He lunged, not to kill, but to reach her. The snow erupted. Gunfire again, this time from the ridge behind her. The posse had returned. Men shouted. Torches fell. Horses screamed. Chaos bloomed like fire in the cold. Clara dropped to her knees as bullets tore the night apart. Tohano fell beside her, blood staining the snow black beneath him. She crawled to him, hands shaking, lantern still clutched. "No, no, no." He smiled faintly, breath ragged. "You hear it now." "Don't you?" "The drums." He shook his head. "The land, it remembers." Around them men screamed, both white and Comanche. The dead had come to collect, faceless in the storm, voices whispering names older than sin. Clara leaned over him. "I can't lose you." "You never had me," he breathed. "You found me," the lantern flickered out. Darkness pressed close. "Tohano." He touched her face. "When they ask who you are, tell them you stayed." Then the cold took him. Clara screamed until her throat tore. The wind carried it across the hollow, swallowed by the storm. She held him, rocking back and forth, while the world burned itself clean. By dawn, the snow was quiet again. No bodies, no blood. Just her, kneeling alone beside the oak, its hollow glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. She reached out one last time. Her fingers brushed the bark, and the whisper came again, but softer this time, familiar. Tohano. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a curse. It sounded like home. When they found her days later, she was still there, eyes open, lips curved in something almost like peace. The locals said she'd gone mad, that she'd spoken to ghosts and called storms. But those who dared to pass the ridge at night swore they could still see her shadow standing beside another, tall and silent, watching the snow fall. Mercy is a door, not a blessing. And once you open it, you can never close it again. Clara Briggs thought she'd saved a man, but what she really saved was the memory of something the world tried to bury: love, guilt, and a land that never forgets. If you felt her story tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales carved from dust, blood, and haunting mercy. This was Wild West Love Stories, where even ghosts remember what the living forget.